Chapter 15. Revelations. 2 more days passed with no sign of Dominic. Then 3 days, then 4, then 5. Soon a whole week had passed. Eventually, the authorities decided to call off the search and let the ship continue on its voyage. The shipping line did not want to cause any further inconvenience for the passengers. The longer they stayed there, the more bad publicity they faced from the press. From their point of view, the sooner things got back to normal, the better. Cruise life continued, and the Parvina took Eddie and Lynn, and its mystery, to St. Lucia, Antigua, Martinique, and Grenada. Back in Barbados, before flying home, Eddie and Lynn went shopping and stopped at a cafe. The TV was on by the bar, but the sound was off. Eddie stared at the news and saw some familiar pictures of the ship, the helicopter searches, and the same photograph of Dominic that was used in all the reports of his disappearance. They had seen all these pictures before, but this time the reports seemed to continue with interviews with people back in the UK. Eddie could see a businessman talking to a TV journalist, then another. Then there were pictures of some buildings. They were offices where Dominic had worked, but Eddie didn't recognize them. There were pictures of Dominic's house and an interview with an elderly couple. The caption read that they were Dominic's neighbors. There was no time to get up and see if he could turn on the sound before the news moved on to another topic. Lynn, they've just shown the report on Dominic again, but they're showing more stuff from home and about where he worked, and interviews with his neighbors. Well, everyone loves a good mystery, I suppose, she said. No, I think the story's changed. Something's going on. Well, maybe you should get a newspaper or look on the internet. Good idea, said Eddie, looking around. There were no papers, but there were 2 computer screens in the corner. Eddie bought a username and password from the waiter and went online. He keyed in the address for the Times website, and there he saw a headline below the UK political news that took him completely by surprise. Under a familiar photograph of Dominic, it read, "Missing businessman stole thousands. Police suspect suicide." Eddie couldn't believe it. He clicked on the headline and a new page revealed itself on the screen. Underneath the headline, there was a picture of a younger Dominic, and a new article appeared. Eddie could not read it fast enough. The search for missing London businessman Dominic Stevens has finally been called off. Authorities now believe that Mr. Stevens took his own life whilst on a cruise in the Caribbean, leaving behind large debts and a trail of fraud and corruption. Mr. Stevens went missing over a week ago on the American cruise ship Parvina, sometime after midnight on the 20th of June in the South Caribbean Sea. After days of searching, it is now believed that Mr. Stevens may have jumped overboard somewhere between Barbados and St. Lucia in an act of suicide. The exact time of his disappearance is not known. Search and rescue teams have been covering an area of thousands of square miles with no sign of Mr. Stevens. The disappearance follows reports that Mr. Stevens had recently been fired from Flash Electronics Inc. by partners in the firm. It had been discovered that Mr. Stevens had embezzled at least £145,000 from the company during the 7 years he had worked there as CEO. Further interviews with police are also being held at other companies who have also reported acts of fraud, corruption, and intimidation in connection with Mr. Stevens. The 61-year-old businessman was due to appear in court on the 15th of June, charged with theft, but failed to make an appearance. He was reported missing by his wife, Margaret Stevens, but it is believed Mr. Stevens left the country on the 16th of June to join the cruise ship Parvina. Friends and colleagues spoke of their shock and disappointment. Eddie looked up from the screen and turned around to Lynn, who was sipping an iced tea. "Lynn, you're not going to believe this," he said. On the last night of the cruise, Eddie and Lynn had a quiet dinner together in the Starlight Lounge, danced for a while, and then went for a walk on deck before bed. Although the day's intense humidity had gone, the evening was still warm. The sky was clear, and bright stars mixed once more with island lights on the far horizon. Eddie leaned on the rail and looked out. "I'm going to miss all this," he said. "I know, me too. But we can do it again, can't we?" "Yes, definitely. But maybe next time we can do it without your ex-boss turning up and creating an international incident." Eddie smiled. "Well, if he does turn up next time, he'll have a lot of explaining to do." "Unbelievable. It's like a story from a film or a book." "Yes, truth is often stranger than fiction." A pause. Both of them looked out to sea. "Do you really think he's out there?" asked Lynn. "He must be. He's not on the ship, that's for sure." "It's a scary thought. He must have been so desperate to jump off a ship at sea, if he did jump. Can you imagine?" said Lynn. "Maybe he fell." "Maybe you pushed him," she said, smiling and nudging Eddie in the side with her elbow. It still hurt where Dominic had punched him. The man was still a pain in his side. "Maybe someone else pushed him," suggested Eddie. Back home there was probably a long queue of people waiting to do something like that to him, and to all the superior-minded, arrogant Dominics of the world. "Sad," she said. "Very," said Eddie. "Some are pushed and some jump anyway. That's the way it is. That's the way it's always been. The trick is what you do next." Eddie took a deep, relaxed breath, let out a long sigh, and looked out to sea, to the Caribbean horizon once more, and for the last time. And then he smiled. It was very clear to him now. He could easily make out the difference between the stars and the lights of the island, and he wondered why he had never noticed it before.